All right, welcome back. You're watching breaking news programming on a huge acquisition. The size of it previously hasn't been seen in Indian IT services history. We're talking about $753 million being paid out by Infosys to acquire Axon Group. It is a European-based company, provides consultancy for those complex issues which are related to SAP for companies across Europe and have a worldwide coverage. Let's talk a little bit about different dimensions of this deal. Prashant Nair, Sheetal Bansal and Shabani Bagay are tracking various elements. Shabani, I'll go to you first on the latest that you're picking up in terms of what has happened in the acquisition climate in the history and what information you can share on those details.
Well, Namrata, it's interesting. I'll be talking about Infosys and their history of acquisitions. Ironically, it's not really gungo when we talk about acquisitions primarily for Infosys. The last we actually recall was about what they actually bagged when they talk about a 30-odd million all-cash deal. When we talk about US acquisition, they signed an Australian IT major expert coming in. That was actually in the telecom space. So that was a smallish sort of an acquisition we are talking about compared to what they've actually gone ahead and done in the consultancy space right now. Even Philips that we talk about, that was still a $250 million. But what we need to note out there is Infosys does not categorize this as an acquisition. For them, it was really an absorption, cannot be categorized. That's what the analysts are also talking about. It really doesn't fall under the acquisition criteria when we talk about Infosys. That was the last one in the BPO space. And they've undertaken some slight smallish ones as about a $3.9 million deal with the Treasury Products division that's called Trade IQ. So a company which does not have a strong history or a strong base of acquisitions that we talk about. This one's surely going to be hogging limelight because it's been a big acquisition coming in at about 753 odd million. Namrata.
Absolutely. In fact, let's get an analyst perspective going. Nitin Padmanabhan joins us for his take on this big news. Nitin, what is your first reading on the size of the acquisition? It's no mean feat, but what do you make of Infosys paying $753 million for Axon Group?
I think a couple of things. First thing is it puts to rest, the general perception that Infosys is extremely conservative. This is the largest acquisition they have made till date. That is one. Second thing is if you look at the company is currently Axon Group, that is. The current market cap of the company is around 323 million pounds, and they've effectively paid a 12% premium to that. And if you look at what happens to Infi in the enterprise solutions and consulting space is by far the largest in India. And after this acquisition, it'll become even larger. So that's the first take. So we need to really see the finer details before we can, come out and really say anything specific on that.
Nitin, on a price to sales basis, Infosys seems to have paid closer to about 2 times. That's pretty in line with what previous recent IT acquisitions have been like. But just tell us, I'm just reading out from the last reported statement out of Axon Group. They had net margins of about 10%. 10%. So safe to say that the acquisition, although revenue accretive, to a large extent, it's going to be margin dilutive?
Yes, it would be margin dilutive, but these acquisitions are not made with a very short-term outlook. It's made with a very long-term perspective in mind. And if you look at the IT industry as a whole, from the growth that they have seen as an application development and things like that, the overall, it has been it can be replicated. In terms of differentiation, there's not much there. So it's more into, getting into the big league, catching a piece of the consulting pie. So overall, it takes Infosys much higher than the rest of the players.
More about the profile of Axon, in the SAP consultancy business and what it brings to Infosys, because Infosys has been saying that we want to get more into the knowledge-based services, we want to get more centered on consultancy and really look at a knowledge-driven model. Can you talk about the synergies you see there?
See, if you look at enterprise solutions per se, SAP per se, you need domain experts. That's why people who are pulled in for SAP are paid much more. So if you look at Infosys, the acquisition currently, the amount Infosys rakes from enterprise solution and consulting is around 994 million as per for the last year. So you put this on top of it, it's by far the largest, the gap between Infy and probably the closest, which would be the Satyam, would be far greater. So it is on top of the league now.
Nitin, I know we don't have very much in terms of details right now from the Infosys management at least, but what's your gut feeling? Do you think the stock is going to behave in a positive fashion? It's going to receive this particular acquisition in a positive way? Because unlike other companies which have gone ahead and done a string of acquisitions, this has been really a first sizable acquisition from the Infosys group, and it might be a large one, but they're sitting on a huge amount of money.
Right. The huge amount of money has been a concern for quite some time, and the question that was asked to the management, I think, consecutively every year, every time we probably met them, what are you going to do with the cash? And I think this is the first time they've come out and really made a large acquisition. So there are two things here. One is, can Infy, bypass the learning curve and really integrate it smoothly? That is one thing we need to look at, because this is a UK-based acquisition. You have cultural issues, but how fast can Infy really, meet that? That is a challenge. Second thing is, you could probably have a knee-jerk reaction in the markets with a small dip, but I think going forward, it's a very positive on the long term.
We're getting reports that the acquisition is likely to be completed by November 2008, so it's going to be quick in terms of the process of completion, and it's going to be an all-cash deal. Nitin, what does this mean to you, the timeline, if it's going to be completed by November, as well as the fact that there will be no debt used for this? It could be just a pure all-cash deal?
That's what it looks from the details that we have so far. It looks like an all-cash deal. And Axon has a small amount of debt. Net debt is around £21.5 million. So they would have bought it in as well.
All right, Nitin, good talking to you. Thanks very much for providing your perspective. We'll come back to you, of course, after management makes its comments public as well. And that's coming up in just a couple of minutes. We'll slip into a short...